Hello, good morning to everybody. Welcome here in Ahoy, Rotterdam for the second day of the ISF World Seed Congress. My name is Szonja Csörgő and I work for the ISF Secretariat, and I would like to introduce to you here this morning four fantastic colleagues from the genetic resource community who are going to discuss together with me the topic of access and benefit sharing for digital sequence information, what is in it for agriculture and food security. So first, I would like to introduce to you Mr. Alwin Kopse in the middle, who is Head of International Affairs and Food Systems in the Swiss Federal Ministry of Swiss Federal Office for Agriculture. Sorry, he is also the chair of Governing Body 11 since October 2023. He has been involved with the international treaty since 1998. I also have Ms. Kim van Seeters next to me, who is Senior Policy Officer in the Netherlands Ministry of Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality. Kim has been involved in issues related to sustainable use and conservation of genetic resources since a long time, and she is very actively involved in discussions on the CBD and the international treaty as well. She is a big promoter of inclusive seed systems as well. I also have in front of me Jasmina Muminovic, who is Head of Genetic Resources at Bayer Crop Science. She's a plant breeder and a population geneticist, and she is the chair of our ISF coordination group on genetic resources. She is also the chair of the International Chamber of Commerce ABS task force. And last but not least, I have Lucy Anyanoglu from Africa with us, from the Engine Network, and she is a visionary entrepreneur under 30, shaping Africa's future through agribusiness innovation. She has been awarded the Rising Star Award of Agripreneur of Africa by AGRA in 2023. She's an advocate for the SDGs and sustainability, and she's also an Engine Ambassador from Nigeria in 2023. So welcome all of you, and welcome and thanks for being here at this early hour. So we are going to discuss about digital sequence information. First question I would like to ask to my colleagues here. This is a discussion that has started a couple of years ago, why to have access and benefit sharing legislation on digital sequence information. And I think, at least in our sector, many people ask the question, what is this discussion about and why do we have this discussion at all? So that is my first question to you. What is your view about this? Why do we have this decision? And why this discussion is important for you? Why is it important for you to be in the discussion? Can I start with you, Alwin?
Sure, you can. I think we have this discussion mainly because the multilateral governance framework and what's happening in the real world that kind of were a little bit divided. So it took us 20 years to figure out what does access and benefit sharing mean for the material. So we were very much developing those rules. At the same time, technology progress, there's a lot of innovation done, we do different things, we know different things, different tools, and I think now this discussion now is about how to adapt the legal framework to what happened outside in the private sector and in research. So I think that's important to have this discussion, and this is important for several reasons, because when you talk about access and benefit sharing to information, be it digital or otherwise, I think we need to keep in mind that whatever we do, we should not impede innovation. We have climate change, biodiversity loss, soil degradation, you name the crisis we are in. And we're going to have one big task ahead of us, all of us, which is food security. And in order to maintain a food security or ensure food security, we're going to need innovation. And today, innovation is a lot based on information and on the digital tools. So we need to keep that in mind. And then we also have to provide legal certainty, so provide a framework where people know the rules. People stick by the rules because they trust the rules, that the rules actually achieve what we want to. And in all that, I think we shouldn't forget equity. Access benefit sharing is a lot about equity, and I think that's a very important consideration to take into account here. And finally, whatever we do, we're going to need to contribute to the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity, be it in form of the living material, but also the related information that comes to it. So I think that's kind of how I see why we have this discussion since a few years.
Thank you, Alwin. Would you agree with that, Kim?
Yes, I would agree with that. But since the Convention on Biological Diversity was agreed in 1992, a long time ago, there were very rapid technological developments in life sciences, and the use of genomic information increased. So it's being used more and more in research and innovation. And this can be in addition to the use of the physical genetic resource, or even instead of that. So I think that's also why we started discussing whether the use of genomic information should also be subject to ABS obligations, because there was a certain fear in Nagoya Protocol context, so the bilateral approach, that there would be less benefit sharing from the use of genetic resources, and that there would be a loophole.
Thank you. Jasmina, how do you see that from the private sector side? Will that be having an impact?
I think we pretty much agree, so are in the same space. So yeah, obviously I will be devil's advocate a little bit. So it's hard to say what are we actually talking about, not why. So I guess we understand better why are we talking about and what are we talking about, because DSI is still just a placeholder for the discussion, so there is no defined scope, it's not a defined term, it stands for digital sequence information. So you can really discuss about, genetic sequences as you know them, DNA, RNA, protein structure, but also it can be anything else beyond that in a sequenced digital form, like metabolites and different types of information. Why are we discussing it? It's, I guess, really obvious that apart from being a very complex and hard to understand technical issue, it's a very strong political discussion, actually. So the DSI is, let's say, maybe a way to try to find a solution to solve some political challenges between, if I may say, global south and global north. Obviously, like Alwin already said, and Kim as well, so that it has been identified as a potential loophole for the lack of benefit sharing funds in the systems which are actually created around physical genetic material. So there was a fear that science would go that way, that there will be no need to actually use physical material, but instead only use information to innovate and to create new products, which is why it was also understood that benefit sharing will still be avoided, so there will be even less and less funds. So that's how we see it as well, but how are we going to solve it?
That's another
question.
Thank you, Jasmina. Lucy, what does this discussion mean for you? You are a young agricultural entrepreneur in Africa. Does that impact, or do you think it will impact your activities in Africa?
Sure, it would. Africa is home to 60% of the arable land in the world, but then we're the most food insecure nation. And that stems to the fact that most of our production is given to post-harvest loss. So this conversation is very important for me as a youth, because I strongly believe that accessibility, especially with digital technology, paves way for youth to come into the sector, and also allows for democratization, such that politics is less, and then youth can then come into the system. As someone who runs an online agribusiness school in Africa, I also see this conversation very important, because it trickles down to bringing in a very important stakeholder, which are the farmers in Africa, into the topic.
Thank you so much. It's very interesting to hear the perspective of young agricultural entrepreneurs on that topic, because I think your peers are not necessarily in the international discussion. So that aspect is maybe missing. So thank you for that first round. I think you mentioned very important aspects that we will need innovation to continue, because food security needs to be ensured. So I would like to get your views on how do you think we can get out of this difficult political, technical discussion on DSI in a way that it will have a positive impact on food security and innovation? Kim?
Well, I wish I had the solution, because then I would bring it. No, the use of DSI is very important for innovation and product development. And by using DSI, thousands of accessions are being compared. So, yeah, the bilateral approach of the current Nagoya Protocol for access and benefit sharing is not suitable for that. And we really want to avoid that research and innovation is hindered. So for our private sector and also for public research institutes, it's very important they can continue the work, as mentioned before, to contribute to global food security, but also to adapting to climate change impact and for public health reasons.
Lucy, do you think there will be an outcome of this discussion which will positively impact your situation?
Yes, I strongly believe that this kind of conversation are very, very important, especially for youth, because most of this information were taken down to the 90s, where a lot of us were babies. So having a system that makes this a lot more accessible, introducing technology, allows young people like us to be able to come in and explore and even improve it with the knowledge and experience we have, especially with technology, AI, IoT into the system. And more importantly, it allows for diversity and inclusion of people who originally didn't have access to this by access to funds to build up systems like this in their own nation. Making this all digital brings everybody into the system.
Thank you. Alwin, what would be, in your view, a positive outcome from this big international discussion on food security and agriculture?
I think a wonderful outcome would be that if the user knows under what kind of rules he or she plays. Now we have different international organizations and treaties working on the same issue, which is DSI. So we have the CBD, we have the international treaty, which is very sector specific to your sector. We have the World Health Organization, they all do something. And now you as a user, if the rules are different and as it's information, you as a user, you're not sure under which regime do we fall. I think what was good in the CBD decision, there was kind of awareness we need to deal with the issue. So you can now actually focus on how to deal with it before we discussed whether or not to deal with it. In the treaty, we are a little bit in a different situation. I think that we do have actually a solution on the table that doesn't so much look into what product or what kind of information you are using, but looks actually for the benefit sharing part, looks actually what do you bring to the market, and that's your basis on which to calculate, to share your benefits on. So the question whether you use material or information or both is not that relevant, and I think that's a very elegant solution if parties then agree to that. So, and I think it's then in our responsibility as a policy developers to see that the user knows under which regime he plays, and ideally for agriculture and food security it just be just one regime, so you wouldn't have to bother is this now CBD treaty, whatever it is. I think that's where we should aim at, and that would be a good outcome.
Thank you, Alwin. How do you see that, Jasmina?
That leaves me with a solution, another solution. I actually think there was something really good, there was a lot really good that the Deputy Director General of the FAO said yesterday, talking about food security, about policies, about the challenges. She said, again, this is just my wording of her words. She said, we need enabling policies that will be science-based and that will be beneficial for everybody.
True.
And I think this is pretty much the idea that we all kind of aim towards, trying to create a system that will work, that will benefit finally the society, because we talk about genetic resources, we actually talk about biodiversity conservation, biodiversity, sustainable utilization of biodiversity. So we would hopefully create a workable multilateral solution. So we will make our multilateral system work, be it at the treaty, be it the new one created at the CBD, which would definitely have to have all the components considered, including research, business needs, farmers' needs, countries' needs, governments' needs, and finally our planet needs. So like a biggest goal. And one other thing important to consider is that we would hopefully create it future-proof so that we don't have to renegotiate every couple of years as innovation moves ahead and new technologies come forward. So that would be an important thing.
Thank you. One challenge I think in this discussion is that maybe the level of awareness of what we are talking about and what can it mean for business and for governments in terms of building up system and monitoring systems is maybe not yet at the best level. So how do you see that? And maybe I start with you again, Jasmina, to go back in the round, if you don't mind. Do you think there is more need to raise awareness on how digital sequence information is used and what the impact might be so that all the parties in the discussion have the same?
Absolutely.
knowledge?
I think there is a huge work to be done at all fronts on awareness raising, even with us, within companies, with users, providers, those who manage the governance of the different systems and funds. There has to be more trust in the end, or at the beginning. So that's what we are probably lacking in these discussions. Again, reminding everybody that this is very politically loaded topic. So trust is very often a very critical piece. So maybe you want to communicate something, but it's not received the same way. On the other hand, in both directions, in all directions. So that would be one thing. And then definitely understanding better what are we talking about, what are our expectations, what can we actually practically manage to get in the end in these hopefully workable mechanisms would be one thing. But then, as Alwin also pointed out, so this is a topic that's been discussed in multiple places, and those heavy, let's say, peaks of discussion for us are at the treaty and the CBD. And it is wrong to assume that there is understanding on the CBD end of what is actually happening in the seed business, what is, let's say, possible, what are the values and what are the challenges, what are the needs of the different players in that space. So definitely understanding, more open dialogue, better exchange, and much higher trust.
On that point of trust, Alwin, as chair of the governing body, do you see this as a challenge to build trust among the different stakeholders to come to a conclusion, a solution on this topic?
I think trust is indeed fundamental. What is also fundamental is mutual respect for the needs, and most important, I think, is a sense for practical solutions. And what I experienced lately, and I look at the co-chair of the working group that is actually dealing with the issue, we have in the treaty, we've gone through a crisis indeed, and it was a deep crisis, but what I've seen in recent months, there was a lot of trust building going on, of entire regions that shifted their position slightly, which is a great sign. So I think a trust is building up. We're probably not there yet, and so that's trust between contracting parties, but equally important is trust between stakeholders. And I think it is dialogue, it is awareness building, it is talking to each other, it is listening to each other's needs, how we're gonna find a solution. And I only can say I really feel we're on a good track, much better than 2 years ago. And so we really need to continue this. It's a constant work we're going to have to do. That's why this opportunity here is a wonderful opportunity to actually talk to each other and listen to each other.
Thank you. Lucy, how do you see the awareness about this topic within your community? How aware your peers are?
I think we are less aware than the older generation. And one way to solve that is having this conversation from a point of impact and benefit. So for a lot of young people, there is little or no understanding on the benefit of conversations like this and how it affects them in the future, right? So if conversations can tilt towards that direction for the young people, then it makes them become more involved when they see that 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now, this is the impact of what you're doing now. And then to the farmers, maybe a way to simplify these words for them, simplify this whole process for them would make them appreciate it even more. A lot of farmers believe that we just sit here to have this conversation and it really has no effect on them. So seed companies having open dialogue, like she mentioned, to really speak down to these farmers to make them understand why these conversations are very important for them and give them an opportunity to also bring in their own inputs, right? Because when all you do is receive without having to bring in yours, then it feels like all you have to do is collect. So if they are given an opportunity to also bring in their own topics, their own observation, their own ideas into the system, and then aligned with what is already existing from policy holders, especially with the government, then we begin to see more acceptance in this topic. Thank you.
Thanks very much. How do you see that as one of the negotiators, Kim? Is there enough awareness for taking decisions?
Well, I'm actually quite positive about it. The level of knowledge about it and also the involvement. It can always be better, but there's very good collaboration, for instance, between the Treaty Secretariat and the CBD. They're informing the participants in the negotiations, so we're at the same level. And it's, for me, it's your homework as well. At national level, you need to contact your colleagues dealing with the other negotiations, so contact different departments. Well, the inclusiveness is important, and the trust and the transparency. There's user perspectives, dialogues. There was a recent meeting in Wilm, bringing together many colleagues from private sector, really to get their inputs. And we have, at national level, we have stakeholder consultations. So it is happening. But I do think it is very important that all actors are involved, so also from the global south, and the breeders and the colleagues from private sector and academia should talk to their governments and explain why DSI is important and that they need to be involved because that's their long-term investment.
Thank you. So we are on the good track, but there is still a lot to do. So I think we are getting close to the end, and what I would like to ask all of you, thanks, first of all, for sharing your perspectives, but if you can have one recommendation, what would be your recommendation to get to a satisfactory outcome on this difficult discussion? Can I start with you, Lucy? What would be your recommendation from the youth perspective?
One of my recommendations would be to effectively use media to gather a lot of information. Mm-hmm. I think we live in a generation where everybody, accesses their phones from anywhere and a bit more trust what they see on their phone than what they even hear from people. And we now live in a world where people communicate with their phone much more than they communicate with real humans. So media is going to play an important part in ensuring that this conversation, goes to a better solution-driven system of perspective.
Jasmina, do you have a recommendation for us to get to a satisfactory outcome on this discussion?
Thinking about this media thing and the conversation that we had yesterday about fake news, so I would be cautious with that. But then maybe connected to that, my recommendation would be listen to science. So really make science-informed decisions. So what happens, and when it's science, I don't separate public research from private research. It's all science, it's all research, it's all working for the same common good. So I would recommend maybe that, in addition to trust, but create trust and rely on scientific realities.
One additional question on that. Do we have a role as seed sector, in your view, to get negotiators more aware about science?
I definitely think we do. And again, we can continue as we have already started many years back, but continue and really have that open dialogue and provide information and provide more in-depth analysis of requirements, needs, opportunities, solution, and looking forward to creating, workable but beneficial system to all. So yes, there is a role for us to play, and I'm sure we will do. And to what Kim was saying, yeah, there is a lot of work happening in certain countries, not across the globe, in this direct dialoguing and communicating between the different stakeholders when it comes to these discussions. So if we would have the example of the Netherlands and the collaboration that we have in the Netherlands across the globe, that would absolutely be beneficial.
Thank you. Kim, do you have a recommendation for us?
Well, personally, I always try to think what it means in practice, because what you agree upon in negotiations and what is it on paper in the end doesn't mean it's a success in practice. So really think through what the implications are, and listen to each other. So try to understand what is behind quite a formal position, because there's reasoning behind, and then you can find each other.
Thank you. Alwin, you're going to have the last word.
I think my recommendation would be that each and everyone actually thinks about what's the contribution to a solution. So come forward with a practical proposals, say practical, be pragmatic, don't look for the perfect, look for the good. And I think, yeah, be open and contribute to the discussion. And I just, in the treaty, a community, again, I think we do have a nice set up there. Private sector is contributing, civil society is contributing, contracting parties are moving as well. And I think that's would be my recommendation. Listen and think what is your positive contribution to finding a solution.
Thank you very much. I think those were very nice last words. So we all have some homework to do, and we will all learn from listening to each other, and hopefully we'll get to a positive solution soon. Thank you very much for being with us this morning, discussing this important topic. Thanks to all of you for waking up and coming here at this early hour to listen to this difficult topic. Thank you.
Thank you.